Welcome back, guys. In today's episode, I'm sharing 10 true, disturbing stories about road trips through the Appalachian back roads. These stories remind us why some roads are better left alone. But before we begin, please consider subscribing, and don't forget to like and share it with your friends. Let me know where you're watching from. Thank you all. Now let's start. My name's Everin. The last bit of signal blinked out just after we passed a gas station that looked like it had died sometime in the 90s. Nobody had bothered to tell it. No pumps. Cracked windows. The sign out front still insisted, open 24 hours. But the only thing open was the roof. Half of it had caved in. I remember looking back at it in the rearview mirror and joking, well, that's promising. Jonah laughed. I don't think we realized yet that we were already too far in. We were somewhere between Bellhurst and a part of the map that just showed trees. Jonah had talked me into ditching the interstate for the shortcut he found online. Shaves off like 60 miles, he'd said, all confident. Locals swear by it. Scenic, low traffic, real backroad vibe. I rolled my eyes. Scenic, in Jonah speak, usually meant unmapped and questionably legal. But we weren't just trying to save time. It was our first trip to that big music festival down in Tennessee, and we wanted the drive to feel like part of the experience. Something more than gas stations and fast food wrappers. We wanted stories. Something dumb and memorable we'd laugh about later. And yeah, we got that, just not the way we expected. At first, the road seemed all right. Paved, barely. A 2-lane ribbon curling through the trees. No lane markings, no shoulder, just asphalt and brush. It snaked along the ridge so tightly, sometimes it felt like the car was leaning into the trees. We didn't pass a single other vehicle. No bikers, no trucks. Not even a lost Subaru. Just us and a slowly narrowing stretch of road that was starting to feel more like a suggestion than a plan. Then we saw the fences. And by fences, I mean these sad-looking metal rods jammed into the dirt, like someone started building a barrier but quit out of boredom. Uneven, crooked. Some had wire wrapped through them. Others were just standing there solo. They'd appear for a bit on one side of the road, then vanish, then show up again on the other side. Like some invisible hand was trying to trace a line through the woods and kept changing its mind. Jonah slowed down a little and said, maybe this was old farmland or something, but he didn't really believe it. You could hear it in his voice, that edge of doubt he gets when something doesn't sit right, but he's still pretending it does. Eventually, the sign stopped entirely. No speed limit signs, no curve warnings, not even a faded mile marker. The trees pressed in tighter. The road got narrower. Then we saw it, the shed. It was just sitting off the right side of the road, maybe 20 feet back. No path, no drive, just there. It leaned slightly, like it had settled unevenly into the dirt. The boards looked like they were salvaged from old barn walls. One window was completely boarded up, and the other had a pale yellow curtain drawn neatly across the inside. Not fluttering, not moving, just drawn, perfectly. Okay, that's creepy, I said, pointing. Jonah glanced over and smirked. Welcome to Appalachian chic, but even he looked over his shoulder after we passed it. 5 minutes later, we passed it again. Same shed, same angle, same curtain. Everything identical. Neither of us spoke that time. We just stared straight ahead. The third time we passed it, I grabbed my phone. Still no service. GPS was frozen. The little blue dot hadn't moved in 20 minutes. I looked at Jonah. His knuckles were pale where he gripped the wheel. When it showed up a fourth time, he pulled over. I got out of the car and stood on the cracked edge of the road, trying to make sense of it. I figured maybe we'd looped. Maybe there was a hidden turn we missed. I paced a bit, looked through the trees, tried to retrace the direction we'd come from, but the road just kept going forward. No forks, no splits, no tire tracks. Just 2 thin lanes cutting through the trees like someone carved them out and forgot why. I don't know why I walked toward the shed. Maybe I needed proof we weren't losing it. Jonah stayed in the car. He cracked the window and said my name once, kind of soft, but didn't follow me. The ditch was full of weeds and small rocks. I stepped through, pushing aside tall grass, and walked right up to the shed's door. It was warm, not sun-warmed. This was different. It felt like heat was radiating through it, like there was something alive behind the wood, something humming. The air was cool around me, and the shed was solid and still, but the door felt like it had a pulse. I didn't touch the handle. I couldn't bring myself to. The yellow curtain didn't move. The boards looked old but strong. I leaned close, but the window was too grimy to see through. I turned around and walked back without knocking. Jonah didn't ask what I saw. We both got in the car and didn't speak for a while. The road split maybe 10 minutes later, just like that. No warning, no signage. One path went right, the other left. Both looked the same, narrow, cracked, swallowed by trees. We argued, sort of. I said right. Jonah said left. He was driving, so we went left. 3 minutes after that, we saw the first man. He was standing a few steps into the trees, just barely past the reach of the sunlight. Still, facing us. Dressed like a farmer from a decade ago, muddy jeans, worn boots, and a threadbare flannel. His hands were by his sides. He wasn't hiding, but he wasn't exactly visible either. If you blinked, you'd miss him. Jonah muttered something under his breath, but I didn't catch it. Then we saw another. Same clothes, same distance from the road, same expression, blank, unreadable. Like someone who wasn't watching so much as cataloging. They kept appearing, every few minutes. Closer, farther, always standing, always watching, not moving, not waving. My chest got tight, but I didn't say anything. Jonah stopped talking completely. His shoulders were locked. He was breathing through his nose in quick little bursts. The sun was going down now, turning everything gold and stretched. Long shadows clawed across the road. My GPS blinked once, just enough to give me hope, then died again. We hit a pothole that made the glove box slam open and scatter a bunch of receipts and empty gum wrappers across the floor. Then we saw the shed again. Same one, same tilt, same yellow curtain. Only this time the curtain had shifted. It was open just an inch or two, and behind the glass, blurry and low, there was a shape. Not a face exactly. Not anything I could name, just the sense of one. A pale smear. A suggestion of eyes, maybe. It didn't move. Jonah slammed the gas. We flew past the shed, tires screaming. I pressed my hand to the window and didn't blink. I couldn't. I needed to see it disappear. Then we hit something. It wasn't heavy, more like a bump, like when you run over a log or a trash bag. But it was solid, enough to jolt the car. We pulled over, got out, looked under and around the car. Nothing. No blood, no animal, no branches. Just 4 muddy footprints pressed into the dust on the back bumper, human-sized, like someone had climbed up, then slid off. We didn't speak after that, we just drove. Eventually, the trees gave way, and we rolled out into some tiny town I didn't recognize. Jonah pulled into the first gas station we saw. I ran inside and asked the guy behind the counter if he could tell me where we were. He looked up, slow, like his brain was still warming up. Then he said, "You come down old number 9? I said, "Maybe." I wasn't sure. He nodded like that answered something. "That road don't lead nowhere," he said. We found a motel off the main road. Jonah paid in cash. We barely spoke. I kept checking the window that night. Every time a car passed, I'd flinch. I dreamed about yellow curtains and watchers with faces you could almost, but not quite, see. When I got home, I pulled up satellite maps and retraced every turn I remembered. There was no fork, no split, just a single line through the woods that cut off halfway across the ridge. I was 26 when it happened, out in the backwoods of the Appalachians. The kind of stretch where your phone drops signal within 20 minutes, where gas stations still run on analog pumps, and the forests crowd in tight enough to make you feel like they're listening, maybe even watching. I'd been burnt out for months. Nothing dramatic, just the slow erosion kind. Work was constant. My sleep was trash. My head buzzed with other people's voices all the time. I didn't want advice. I didn't want podcasts or playlists. Not even a call with my brother. I wanted 3 days off the map. Just me, some paper maps, and the dusty ribbon of the Blue Ridge running through the mountains like a spine. I packed light, food, gear, backup batteries, a camp stove I barely knew how to use. I didn't even bring a cooler. I wasn't planning on seeing anyone long enough to share a sandwich. Day 1 was exactly what I needed. Crisp mountain roads. Long, empty switchbacks. Those strange little pull-offs where the trees swallow everything behind you. I passed one car in 6 hours. I waved. They didn't wave back. Perfect. Perfect. Just road and hum and gravel crunching under the tires. I didn't even play music, just drove. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It felt like rinsing static out of my brain. The more I moved forward, the quieter my mind got. That night, I found a tiny state-run campsite just east of a place called Harrow Ridge. I was the only one there. I cooked a can of beans badly, watched the stars for maybe an hour, and passed out by 9. The second day, I stayed off the main roads. I used the paper map like a treasure hunt, cutting across dotted lines and old scenic byways. Most weren't on my GPS. That was the point. I wanted wild edges. I wanted something that hadn't been flattened by convenience stores and fast food signs. By late afternoon, I'd gone miles without seeing another person. The last marked road I'd taken had narrowed until the center line vanished. At one point, I drove under a sagging arch of pines so dense it looked like a tunnel. On the other side was a stretch of cracked asphalt, flaked and broken, with weeds pushing straight through. The earth was slowly reclaiming it. It didn't even look like part of the route, but the map didn't say otherwise. It was quiet in a way I hadn't felt in years. So I stopped, didn't bother pitching the tent. I figured I'd just sleep in the back of the car that night. Safer. Easier. The air had this heavy, still quality. I leaned my seat back, cracked the windows an inch, and let my eyes drift shut. I must have dozed off. But sometime after midnight, the dome light blinked on. Not a flash, just a soft glow like someone had opened a door. I sat up fast. All doors were locked. Nothing had moved. I was alone. Or I should have been. I turned the light off manually. Waited. Listened. Nothing. Just a thickness in the dark, like the night had weight. I told myself it was a power quirk. Maybe the battery was acting up. Maybe something shifted in the wiring. Still, I didn't sleep the rest of the night. Just stared into the black, trying not to flinch at every creak from the trees. At dawn, the place looked wrong. I couldn't put my finger on it. The road was the same technically, same cracks, same buckled asphalt. But the trees were closer. I know how that sounds, but I swear they had moved. Not dramatically, just a subtle crowding, like they'd taken a step forward when I wasn't looking. Branches that had been 5 feet away now scraped the edges of the car. I got moving fast. Tried to retrace my route, but after an hour of driving I passed this old rusted road sign. Just a metal rectangle on 2 posts. No letters left, just corroded streaks where paint had been. I'd seen it before, maybe 30 minutes earlier, or maybe not. Maybe it just looked the same. But then the curve came again. Same slight dip in the shoulder. Same shallow rut under the tires. Same stretch of road. I slowed down. Stopped. Checked the map again. None of it lined up. The thing is, you can't really panic on those roads. There's nowhere to pull off, nowhere to walk to. The forest just goes on. So I kept driving, slower now, trying to keep my eyes sharp. That's when I saw the deer. It was lying on its side in the middle of the road. Didn't look fresh. At first, I thought it had been dead a while. But when I got closer, I saw it wasn't decayed. It just didn't have any fur. Its skin was pale, taut, like something had boiled it and stretched it over the bones. Every rib stood out. The eye sockets looked unfinished. The shape was there, but the details hadn't loaded. I drove around it carefully, wheels crunching on gravel. In the rearview mirror, I caught movement. It was sitting up. Not standing, just sitting upright, like something had yanked it by the shoulders. Its legs twitched and jerked unnaturally, like a puppet with bad strings. One limb shuddered and dragged as it moved toward the tree line. I didn't look again. The road got worse after that. Tighter curves. Trees so close they scraped the side mirror. At one point, I swerved to avoid a fallen branch. But when I looked back, it wasn't there. It started to feel like the road was moving around me, not the other way around. Eventually, I found a narrow turnout barely wider than the car. I wedged in, turned the engine off, locked everything, and sat there trying to breathe normally. I told myself I'd wait it out. Just a weird stretch of forest. Just bad sleep and isolation messing with my head. Then, close to midnight, I heard footsteps. Not animals. Not scattering. Slow steps. Single steps. Spaced out like someone deliberately pacing. Crunch. Pause. Crunch. Around the car, there was no trail. No open space to walk. Just trees. Still, the steps kept circling. Then they stopped at the passenger side. A soft press on the door handle. Not yanking. Not banging. Just testing. Like checking if it was locked. I turned on the headlights. Nothing. No shape. No figure. Just beams on the trees, vanishing into a black that felt deeper than it should have been. I didn't sleep. I didn't even blink much. My hands stayed tight on the wheel until the sky began turning pale. When light finally came, I drove. Didn't check the map. Didn't stop to eat. Just drove until the trees thinned, the road smoothed, and buildings appeared again. I passed a gas station in a town called Gallows Fork and pulled in like I was escaping something. I sat there in the lot for what felt like forever, hands trembling on the wheel. Later, I tried explaining it to a ranger outside a visitor center near the border. I showed him the map, pointed out where I thought I'd been. He went quiet, said there weren't any roads in that area that matched what I described. The forest there was steep. He suggested I misread the terrain, that I'd probably just circled without realizing. I still love mountain roads, but now I stay on the highways. Every summer, we piled into our aging silver SUV. Snacks were crammed in, pillows tugged into corners, and the trusty cooler wedged between seats. Then we pointed south. It had become an unspoken tradition. My dad always avoided the interstate. He said all the exits looked the same, lined with fast food chains and dull billboards. Highways are like endless grocery stores, he'd grumble. Mountains have personality. I usually didn't argue. The curves made me queasy sometimes, but slipping on music and watching the forest close in was beautiful in its own way. That year, though, something felt off from the very start. We turned off the main road, Route 68, I think, and everything shifted. Not the temperature, not the hum of the engine, but the air itself felt thicker. The trees loomed taller, darker. They didn't just border the road. They leaned in, closer and closer, until sunlight flickered across the seats like it was being stopped at checkpoints. My playlist hit a curb at that moment, and I didn't even skip the song. Normally, I'd be lost in lyrics. This time, I was caught on the way shadows crouched at the edge of my vision. Not long after, the GPS blinked out. First, it stuttered, like it couldn't catch its breath, then it went black. Guess we're really off the grid now, my dad laughed, sounding confident. But I watched his reflection in the rearview mirror. For a moment, uncertainty flared, and I felt a tightening in my chest I couldn't name. The road wound tighter, steeper, quieter. We hadn't seen another car in what felt like forever. My sister Olivia, she was 10 then, leaned against the window, eerily still, mouth parted in dreams I couldn't hear. My mom kept swinging her phone around, poking at the empty bars, sighing at each no service pop-up. I pressed my forehead to the cool glass and watched the trees blur, then stutter, as if even they weren't sure they should keep moving. We finally stopped at a gas station, though that's generous. One rusty pump crouched beneath a battered awning, and a sideways sign spelled simply "Fuel" in peeling red letters. The place looked abandoned, like someone had left under construction, up for 30 years and never came back. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, making my teeth itch. Behind the counter stood a man who stared without blinking. Pale, thin, almost translucent. His gaze followed us but never settled. My mom asked for directions back to the interstate. He spoke like a broken tape. Slow, flat, left at the fork. Stay straight. Don't take the gravel roads. Then, as if he forgot the rest, he repeated only that part. Don't take the gravel roads. No blink, no nod, no smile. When we left, a woman appeared beside the SUV. Gray hair plastered against her scalp, clothes threadbare. She stood so still, I thought she was part of the vehicle. Then her eyes met mine. She smiled, not warm but sly, like she held a private joke I wasn't supposed to hear. Then she turned and walked backward into the trees, feet crunching as though she wanted us to know she was still there, even as she disappeared. You'd think that would have been our cue to turn back, but we didn't. The road closed in again, narrow, cracked, begging for a tire blowout. The center lines vanished. Fog crept in, thick and low, swallowing the world ahead. That's when the signs appeared, nailed to trees like warnings. Keep driving, the first one shouted in thick black paint. I laughed it off. Who wouldn't think it was a prank? But my mom gasped, and she didn't look away. The next one read, "Don't stop." The letters were smeared, like someone had written them in a rush. My mom whispered, "Should we turn around? The road's too narrow," my dad replied, clipped and sharp. Nowhere to stop. Then came the last sign. They're waiting. Silence filled the SUV. My sister twitched in her sleep. I thought I saw something move at the edge of my vision. Trees shivering, shifting. But when I turned my head, the motion vanished, like it was ashamed of being seen. Suddenly, headlights blazed into our rear windshield. Relief hit me first, thinking another car meant rescue. But no, this car stayed glued to us. Same distance, same brightness. My dad sped up. The car sped up too. Pull over, "Let them pass," my mom begged, but there was no shoulder, just forest and sheer drops. That's when I saw them. People. They lined the roadside. Men, women, even children. Frozen. Heads turned in unison, following us like tracking devices. Bodies still, eyes locked. "Faster," I whispered, my voice shaking. My dad pressed harder on the gas. The headlights swelled brighter. Too close. Too fast. The road veered. Dad slammed the brakes. Tires howled. The SUV fishtailed, jerking sideways. Everything screamed. Metal, rubber, heartbeats. When we stopped, I turned to look out the back window. Nothing. Just fog and still trees. No headlights. No car. No people. Just absence. My mom muttered prayers. My dad hit the gas again. This time we didn't slow, not once. The fog thinned, just like that. The road opened wide. A fresh green sign appeared. Interstate ahead, 5 miles. So absurdly normal. No one spoke until we reached Redvale, exit 22. A small motel sign flickered neon, and somehow even "Welcome" sounded wrong. I climbed out, reached for my bag. That's when I saw it. 4 vertical smudges streaked across the outside of the back window. Mud dragged down like fingers clawing from the top edge. I'd looked out that window 100 times. I would have noticed if it was already there. I didn't sleep all night. I stared at the ceiling, pressing my fingers hard against my eyelids, counting seconds until sunrise. I spent most weekends back then exploring the Appalachian backroads. It wasn't a project, and it wasn't a search for something. I just liked empty, twisty asphalt that led nowhere. Just curves slicing through ridges and hollows, the world falling away until it was just me and the road. And somehow, that felt like freedom. I kept a dog-eared notebook on the passenger seat. Inside were lists of every road I'd tried, which ones felt promising, which ones felt stale, and which ones I might go back to someday. That weekend, I pulled out my not-so-trusty map and pointed at Route 92B. On paper, it was barely even a line, a faint gray whisper begging to be ignored. That was exactly why I chose it. The turnoff wasn't obvious. It was hidden behind a pair of leaning pines, sagging like weary old men, their branches brushing the pavement. Grass grew right through the cracked asphalt, nearly joining the edges in a green seam. I could have missed it if I hadn't been paying attention, and maybe that was part of the draw. Right away, it felt deserted. No shoulder, no signs, no other cars. The trees leaned in too close, branches scraping the roof in a dry whisper, not loud but insistent enough. I muttered to myself, just another forgotten road, nothing out of the ordinary. But even as I said it, my voice felt faint, distracted. Soon enough, I passed mile marker 12. The paint was so faded I almost drove right by. The post was dented, the metal puckered, and there was a neat bullet hole in the corner. I made a note, 12, dent plus bullet hole, and kept going. A few minutes later, marker 13, slightly less worn, but still battered. Then marker 14. I smiled, thinking, at least there's some order, a little human trace to cut through the wilderness. 10 minutes later, I blinked. There was 12 again. Same dent. Same hole. I slowed, leaned forward, stared out the window. This was exactly the marker I had just passed. I looked behind me, no forks, no side paths, nothing that looked like a turn. Just more trees. I told myself I was tired. Maybe I spaced out. Maybe the road curved back without me noticing. I'd done stranger things out there, alone in the middle of nowhere. So I shook my head, gripped the wheel tighter, and kept going. But then it happened again. Marker 13, then 14, then back to 12. Something tightened behind my ribs. My stomach knotted, like when you're about to laugh at a joke, but your teeth clamp shut instead. I breathed slow and whispered, "You've got this. You're just tired. Keep going." That's when I saw the house. It sat maybe 30 feet from the road. No driveway remains, just dirt and patchy grass that looked untouched for years. The clapboard siding was so weathered it looked fuzzy. The whole structure leaned to one side. The front door hung slightly open, drifting like it had caught a soft breath of wind. In the yard sat an ancient truck, rust spreading across its body, tires sunken almost to the rims. Its windows were blackened, either stripped out or sealed long ago. I didn't slow, I didn't blink. Empty houses exist everywhere on roads like this. It might have been leaning, but nothing worth startling over. until I saw it again. Same house, same truck, same half-open door. This time my breath caught sharp in my chest. I eased off the gas, telling myself it was a trick of the trees, but I knew that wasn't enough. The next time, the door was open wider. That tiny shift felt deliberate, like someone, or something, was waiting for me to notice. The fourth time, a figure stood in the doorway. No face, no details, just a shape, still as stone, watching. It didn't move, didn't wave, didn't follow me with its gaze. But I felt seen. My chest stuttered. My foot slammed the gas before my mind caught up. I didn't breathe. I didn't look away. I didn't even blink. I just drove. The mile markers came again. 12, 13, 14, back to 12. They rolled by like mocking little deadlines. The house followed. The door, the figure. Each time the same. Each time watching me like I was the intruder. By then, my phone was dead. GPS had gone gray miles back, no signal, just a blank screen. The map in my glove box showed 92B winding through ridges and hollows. But it didn't show loops. And it didn't show a house that stalked the roadside. I must have been out there for over an hour. The oil cutoff warning had long since flashed. All I had were the scribbles in my notebook and the scraps of memory holding me together. Then I saw headlights, far down the road, a pair bounding toward me through the trees. Relief hit so hard I nearly slumped forward. Another car, another person. I flicked my brights. I tapped the horn, begging for recognition, for proof that I was still real. But when it pulled level with me, it wasn't another person. It was my car. Same make, same model. Same cracked taillight cracked a week ago, backing into a mailbox. Same faded bumper sticker I'd never peeled off. And behind the wheel was me. Not looking, not reacting, just driving forward like I wasn't even there. I swerved hard, gravel spitting from under the tires. Every muscle in my body seized at once. The other car didn't hesitate. It rolled on, taillights fading red into the trees. I froze. The world felt brittle, too sharp, too real. Dust settled in the beam of my headlights, hanging there like it belonged more than I did. That's when I realized forward meant chasing that version of me. Backward meant passing the house again, passing the figure waiting in the doorway. Waiting. Panic chewed at me, but somewhere under it, a decision clicked. I threw the car into reverse. The engine groaned, gears grinding, like it knew this wasn't what it was built for. I crept backward, one hand tight on the wheel, one clutching the seat. My breathing was shallow, ragged. I refused to look at the house, but I felt it there, the doorway beside me, the figure at the edge of my vision, still, silent, waiting for me to turn. I didn't. I couldn't. The car rattled and shook, but I kept going. Not until the tree line thinned. Not until the pavement smoothed back into the familiar highway I recognized. At the gas station, I rolled to a stop and killed the engine. Only the soft tick of cooling metal filled the silence. My hands trembled so violently I thought I might leave fingerprints etched into the wheel. I pressed my forehead against it, but the sense of motion didn't stop. For a moment, I swore the car was still moving. Forward, backward, sideways. I had to look up just to be sure. I've never driven 92B again, and I stopped those solo Appalachian runs. I'm 26 years old, and that road trip through the Appalachian back road still knots my stomach when I think about it. I remember how it started like any other spontaneous escape. Just a quick, cheap getaway before summer slipped away. Nothing fancy. Just ditching the interstate, turning onto twisty back roads, chasing little towns we'd only ever heard about in stories or late-night playlists. It was early morning when we pulled out. The sun was rimmed in pink and gold. The car was packed with too many snacks, chips that crunched too loud, dreamy homemade cookies already half-melted, and beer that was warmer than any of us admitted. The hum of tires on pavement, morning light glinting off the hood, it felt like things were exactly as they should be. At first, everything lined up. The GPS guided us onto a two-lane ribbon of road curling into the hills. Trees arched overhead, branches close enough to brush the roof, forming a leafy corridor that smelled green and alive. We cracked jokes about being in a movie, about how real the Appalachians felt, untracked, unspoiled, hours for the day. So when our phones went out, 0 bars, black screens, we laughed. "Welcome to unplugged mode," I said. We joked it was a plan all along. No Instagram check-ins, no maps. But reality didn't take long to creep in. The GPS froze. Its map showed a flat, straight road, but in front of us the pavement snaked and twisted, fading in ways the screen had no record of. We exchanged looks, shrugged. "Adventure," Evans said, brushing chip crumbs off his lap. But as the forest thickened, that shrug felt less casual. The first crooked sign appeared. We nearly missed it, leaning to one side, fresh wood painted in shaky letters. It read, "Creeley's Fork, 8 miles." None of us had heard of it. I snapped a picture with my phone before it died completely. The joke was, I'd blog the trip someday, but only if I made it home. Then came more. Harper's Knob, 5 miles. Jude's End, 12 miles. Elth Creek, 9 miles. All in that same clumsy font. Some distances scratched out and overwritten, arrows pointing in odd directions, as if someone wanted us to go in circles. We laughed, but the laughter was pale, mixed with uneasy glances ahead. And then we saw the houses. I tried to joke about living somewhere so quiet no one cared about upkeep, but the houses looked like they'd collapsed mid-sentence. Porches buckled, paint peeled in curling strips, roofs sagged like they'd given up. I squinted through the windshield when a curtain twitched. Nothing but fabric, but it felt deliberate. We passed a doorway swinging shut, too smooth to be the wind. "Did you see that?" Megan whispered. Her voice was half a laugh, half a choke. For the first time, our jokes fell flat. Then Evans said he saw someone, a shape at the tree line. I turned, peered into the gloom, but saw only branches and shadows. Still, I didn't argue. I couldn't convince myself either way. No other cars appeared, no taillights behind us, no headlights ahead. Just us, crawling through this narrowing road, the trees pressing closer. And then came the fork. To the left, a sign in splintered wood, "Dead Hollow, 3 miles." The letters were shaky, painted fast and uneven. To the right, a rusted pickup, flat tires, half sunk in the dirt, abandoned, blocking the road. The woods on both sides pressed in like walls. "We're not going down a road called Dead Hollow," Megan said. Her voice was quiet but firm. I heard her trying not to laugh or cry. Evan leaned forward, deadpan. "Sure, but you want to stay here with that thing?" He nodded at the truck. "Who abandoned it? Where did they go?" We stared. No one suggested anything. Finally, I turned the wheel toward Dead Hollow. There was no comfortable option. The pavement ended immediately. The sedan rattled over gravel, then dropped onto dirt that shook our teeth. Branches clawed at the sides. The smell of wet earth seeped in through the vents, fouler and denser than any forest smell I'd known. Like it was breathing with us. We crept forward. No one talked. Headlights carved tunnels of light, shadows flickering against bark. The air felt still, as if the woods were holding something back. Then, headlights ahead. A car. Relief swept through us. We leaned forward. But as we drew close, excitement drained. The car was sideways, blocking the road. Both doors flung open. Empty. "Don't stop." Evan's whisper was harsh, sudden. His hand gripped my shoulder tight, but there was nowhere to go. I edged forward until we were only feet away. We sat. Nothing moved. Not the branches. Not the car. Not even insects. Silence thick as fog. I cracked the window. "Can we?" My voice caught. No answer. No rustle. No bird. Just quiet pressing in. Then Evan jolted. I whipped around. A greasy outline smeared across the glass beside him. Fingers, too long, stretched across the whole pane. Almost human, but not. It wasn't there a second ago. I slammed the car into reverse. Tires screeched. Gravel spat. Branches rattled as we flew backward. Megan shouted. Evan twisted, scanning the dark. I floored it. We didn't slow until asphalt met our wheels again. That summer, I turned off the interstate and slipped onto the back roads. I wove through the Appalachian hills like I was chasing something, maybe peace, maybe just a breather from everything that felt wrong. For weeks, I'd been buzzing with that restless energy, the kind that settles behind your ribs and refuses to leave. Driving always helped. The steady hum of tires, the gentle bend of curves, the grounded feel of asphalt beneath the wheel. It calmed the noise in my head. So I left early one morning, before the world was fully awake. No schedule, no destination, just me and the promise of somewhere less known. I told myself I'd let these small, nameless roads lead wherever they wanted. It felt liberating. At first, I passed through little towns, places where time seemed frozen the day they painted the storefronts. peeling pastel paint on clapboard walls, gas stations with pumps that remembered better days, dusty windows that looked like they'd last seen life in 1976. I smiled. There's a quiet charm in those leftover places, even if they feel like stepping into someone else's dream. But soon the towns thinned out. Buildings vanished. Signs gave way to grass and rocky slopes. The road twisted deeper into the hills, and the forest pressed close. Trees so dense I could barely see beyond the ditches. Mailboxes marked driveways where no houses appeared. Sometimes I'd pass an overgrown entrance, and if I squinted, I could almost imagine a porch behind the trees. But it was always just imagination. Evening sank in. That's when I realized I hadn't seen another soul. No cars, no dogs trotting the shoulders. Just me, the engine's hum, and relentless quiet. Then I glanced at the fuel gauge. Low, barely above empty. My chest tightened. I counted miles in my head, willing that needle to climb instead of fall. That's when I spotted the sign. Wooden, crooked, with fading red paint. Fuel ahead 6 miles. I laughed, half relief, half nerves. The kind of laugh that comes out like a sigh. That sign might have saved me. Moments later, the road curved down into a clearing. There it was, a squat white building you could almost call a gas station. One lonely pump stood guard over a gravel lot. The station's windows were plastered with brittle newspapers, edges brown, curling, like someone tacked them up decades ago and forgot. The pump itself, rust-speckled, warped, but still upright, not completely dead. Maybe, just maybe, it still worked. I parked and stepped out. The air was unnaturally still. No wind, no birds, no cicadas, nothing. And beneath that nothing, a silence that felt heavy, like it was waiting. I walked up to the door. It creaked, though I never got it open. The knob was cold when I tried. Locked. A tiny bell hung from fraying twine. I tugged it gently. It gave a brittle jingle, thin and hollow. The sound didn't echo, didn't drift. It just died on the spot. I turned back toward the pump and froze. The meter was ticking, slow, deliberate clicks. Climbing higher, but there was no car. No tank being filled. The hose lay limp on the gravel, nozzle pointing down. My lungs locked. The numbers kept advancing, as though in some private transaction that had nothing to do with me. Instinct shoved me forward. I crouched, grabbed the nozzle, tried to prove I was still tethered to reality. The cold metal stung my palm. That's when I heard it. A whooping sound, warped, muddled, pulsing out of the woods. Too long, too hollow. Not a bird. More like a stretched out shout, as if the earth itself exhaled in warning. I froze, eyes fixed on the tree line across the road. The whoop came again. Louder, deeper, closer, and then I saw it. Just beyond the ditch, a thin white line stood in the air, perfectly straight, like someone had sliced reality open. At first I thought it was sunlight or dust, but it stayed. I blinked, still there. It flickered, still there. It widened, slowly, like the world was yawning. The trees behind it bent, distorted, pulled toward the light. The whooping built until it pressed against my ribs. The brightness burned into my eyes, blinding but cold. The air shifted. I swallowed hard. Something stepped through. I couldn't name it. My brain first tried deer, tall, limb-shaped, but the proportions were wrong. The head drooped too low, bent unnaturally so it could peer at me. The arms bent backward, sharp and wrong. The legs stretched long, thin, but jointed in the wrong places. Every detail was off. Every detail betrayed nature. Tears slicked my eyes from the glare. I tried to blink it away, but my vision clung tighter. The noise wasn't outside anymore. It was inside, in my skull, behind my teeth, vibrating through me. My vision sputtered, my knees buckled. And then, darkness. When I woke, I was in the driver's seat, car off, parked square at the pump, hands still resting on the wheel, fuel gauge full, the nozzle seated, as though I'd placed it there myself. 3 days gone, my watch said so. My phone agreed. Morning, noon, and night had ticked past. I sat frozen, chest tight, mind scrambled. I unbuckled, touched my arms, my legs. No dirt, no scratches, no proof I'd been anywhere. Clothes the same. But the odometer, it had jumped 40 miles, even though I hadn't driven an inch. I stayed there for hours, gripping the wheel, just breathing. When I finally pulled away, I gave myself one story. A mechanic came out with a tank and filled me up. That's all. Safe, simple, enough to tell anyone who asked. Enough for them to nod and move on. I've stayed off the back roads ever since. I was 28 when it happened. I had been sitting in this slow, quiet burnout for months. Things I used to love didn't spark any excitement. Even silence felt like static filling the space around me. Not depressed, just empty. My phone notifications piled up, unread. I hadn't checked work email in 3 days. Stepping into my apartment felt like walking into someone else's life. Every object was familiar, but none of it felt like mine. So one evening, I walked out. And I didn't look back. No plan, no calls. I didn't tell a soul I was leaving. I grabbed my car, filled the tank halfway, and drove. I had a week off work and no intention of explaining myself. I drove south from Ohio, hugging the back roads into West Virginia. 2-lane stretches curled through the hills, trees leaning close like they were listening. I rolled the windows down, kept the music soft, and turned off my phone. The goal was nothingness. The kind that stretches out time, the kind that unclogs the mind. By the third night, I was deep in the Appalachians. No idea where. One road had no designation, just handmade signs nailed to trees. Fresh honey, rabbit farm. Maybe apple slice. The paint was faded, the wood splintered. Not a single car in sight for more than an hour. The sun dipped behind the ridges, shadows stretching thin across the road. Twilight felt like it was breathing on me. I figured I needed somewhere to stop before it fully closed in. One shaky bar on my phone. I opened the rental app on a half-wish. No hotels for miles. But one listing popped up. So cheap, I thought it was a prank. Name, Cabin in the Heart. No reviews. Just 3 grainy photos. A couch, sunken and unloved. A dented stovetop, kettle scratched from use. A bed, wrapped in a quilt that had seen brighter days. No exterior shots. No description. I should have scrolled past, but I didn't. I booked it. Moments later, a message appeared. Short, efficient. Follow the gravel road past mile marker 12. Look for the fence with the antlers. Drive until it ends. Door is unlocked. That was all. No name. No greeting. Just directions. The kind you'd expect in a place where Wi-Fi is a rumor. I left the paved road. The gravel path cracked with weeds. At mile marker 12, I saw it, a rusted gate slumped in the brush. Next to it, a fence stretched into the forest. Barbed wire, tied together with deer antlers. Some still had tufts of fur stuck to the bone. They weren't decorative, they were raw. My heart caught. I should have turned around. Instead, I pressed the gas and moved forward. The road shrank into what felt like an abandoned fire trail. Narrow, rutted. Branches scraped the sides of my car like ghost hands. The undercarriage bottomed out twice. Trees arched inward until they met overhead in a hush. Finally, I came around a bend into a clearing. There it was, a cabin, grayed and slumped like it had grown sideways from the earth. No porch light, no path, no welcome. And I knew, deep down, I shouldn't step inside. But the door was unlocked. Inside, the air was stale and heavy. Furniture sagged, mismatched and tired. The kitchen had one burner, the crooked kettle, and a damp roll of paper towels. A chipped mug sat in the sink. No fridge, no microwave. The bedroom was only a corner with a cot, covered by a wool blanket that promised to itch. And then there was the wall, rows of Polaroids, dozens, maybe 100, spread above the couch like a patchwork of frozen moments. Each one showed a person or a couple standing in or around the cabin. They smiled, they held mugs, they gave thumbs up, like they were told, say I was here. But their smiles looked mechanical, frozen in place. My heart thudded. I didn't move. I set my duffel down and turned slowly, letting the reality sink in. No Wi-Fi, no signal. The world I came from had vanished. I was stuck. I pulled out a can of soup from my bag, tried to warm it on the tiny burner. It barely heated. I ate it cold, leaning on the counter. Each time I looked back at the wall, the faces seemed to shift. Not enough to meet my eyes, just closer. Then one photo dropped. Soft thud, no wind, just gravity shifting. It showed a woman my age, short red hair, flannel shirt tied at the waist. She stood sideways, not facing the camera. Behind her was the antler fence. A pickup truck sat where my car now did. Her eyes were closed. I picked it up. My palm went slick with sweat. I tacked it back onto the wall, but not where it came from. I pinned it in the center, hoping it belonged there. Then I lay on the cot. The blanket scratched against me. I stared at the ceiling until my fingers fell asleep. I left the lamp on. Sleep came like fog. At midnight, I woke. Not the sound, but the silence. Every noise of the night had gone missing. Not a breeze, not a cricket, only stillness. Something nudged me awake. I sat up. That's when I saw him. A man stood outside the window. Still, barefoot, clothes hanging loose like they belonged to someone else. He was 10 feet away, turned at an angle. One arm raised, hand lifted, but not waving, not signaling, just raised. I froze. Time stretched. The cabin's dim light carved him into silhouette, but his face stayed shadowed. Then he stepped backward, ghost-like, feet sinking into the trees until he was gone. My chest rattled with breath. I forced myself to move. I locked the door, shoved the chair beneath the handle, turned on my flashlight, though I knew it was useless. I stayed awake until dawn. When pale light touched the trees, I packed my bag. I whispered to myself, "Get out." Then I opened the door. The Polaroid wall was blank. Every photo gone. In their place, 6 new ones, all tacked neatly in a row. The first 5 were strangers, expressionless, no background, all taken from the same angle. And the 6th, it was me, asleep, on the cot, wrapped in that cheap blanket. The photo taken from the bedroom doorway. I didn't grab anything else, not a charger, not toiletries. I slid into my car with shaking hands and drove. I didn't stop until pavement returned. I was 24 when I talked Mara into one of those wing it weekend trips. Just 2 old paper maps everyone warned you to hold on to. She agreed, but only if we ditched the highways. Somehow, that sounded like a fantastic idea. So we packed a cooler full of soggy sandwiches. We grabbed 2 maps from the dusty rack at the gas station. Then we pointed our hatchback toward wherever the roads might lead. Late Saturday, we drove into what I still call the no-service zone. Not dramatic, just the GPS blinking, no service. Then nothing. The kind of nothing that feels fine for a minute until it doesn't. We turned the radio off because it buzzed and sputtered between lifelines. Silence won by a landslide. The trees arched over the road like they were whispering something, though the air didn't stir. Not creepy, just kind of waiting. Then we saw the sign, Caleb's Fork, 4 miles. It leaned crooked, half the letters missing. Mara laughed. That sounds like a place parents use to scare kids into behaving. I joked it was some bored local's idea of frontier marketing. But the hitch in my chest told me something was different, in a good way. We turned right there. The road shrunk. First a single lane, then just gravel dust where 2 cars might once have passed. The sun dropped behind the pines. That cool see-through patch of air hinted dusk was just around the bend. We passed a mailbox. One mailbox, alone. It tilted low, sagging like something had tried to crawl out from underneath. No house beside it. Just forest and an echo of stillness. We pulled into what might once have been a town. A ghost version, at least. Roofs caved, walls cracked, porches rotted to kindling. At the end of the gravel stood a skinny church. Its steeple split like old wood does. A door dangled on half its hinges. I killed the engine. The quiet filled in fast. My shoes sounded like they belonged somewhere else when I stepped onto the cracked flagstones. Mara said, "Let's check the church." She spoke as if she were signing us up for a quick detour, nothing more. But her voice was even, flat, like it came from under anesthesia. I followed her. We stepped past bits of wood and broken shingles. Dust motes floated inside the boarded-up store across the way. Through a shattered window, I saw shelves stripped bare. No cans, no colorful packaging, nothing. A single chair lay on its side in the middle, like someone had dropped it and walked out. Everything was eerily clean, if that makes sense. Clean, but dead. That's when Mara spoke. Her voice was quiet, a little off. "There's someone upstairs." I froze, not because she was wrong, but because she sounded sure. I looked at the town, the silent buildings, the wind that refused to blow. Then at Mara's face, expression still, and I watched her walk toward the church without looking back at the store. My heart stumbled. I dove after her, mind half in disbelief. The door hung ajar, like it meant to stay that way until someone bothered it again. Mara knocked. One slow, deliberate tap. Silence. So complete it slapped me. Then a breeze strode in, sudden and sharp. It pushed against us. Mara pulled a breath that cracked in her chest. Someone was inside, she whispered. I stared. No movement. No footprint across the threshold. I kicked a tiny pebble. It stayed pointed, unmoved, in a place where it never should have been. Let's go, I muttered. My voice sounded too loud. We sprinted back to the car, stumbling on gravel, adrenaline high enough to power street lamps. I fumbled with the keys. The engine roared to life. But the road looked different. Or maybe I did. The trees leaned closer. The forest felt crisper, colder, smaller, like we had shrunk in place. That mailbox? Gone. The gravel didn't match anything in my memory. For a breath, I wondered if the headlights had pulled everything just out of sync. I pressed the gas. We rounded a bend, and there, a figure in the ditch. Man-shaped, head down, not moving. Watching? Maybe. My foot stayed down. Mara's silence settled over us like a weight. Minutes later, the sign reappeared. Caleb's Fork, 4 miles. My chest clubbed. We had moved, definitely. But now we were back, like the map was a loop we didn't know we were on. I stomped the brakes. The car shuddered to a stop. Mara pressed against the door, shoulders hunched, eyes wide in the shadows. We reversed, spun the wheel, and I floored it with desperation. Everything blurred. Every bend dared us to look, waiting for something to step out. Then I saw them. 2 shapes at the tree line, barely there, pale, more silhouettes, watching. I didn't slow. Fear and speed blurred together, pushing us forward. Then pavement cracked back into place. The gravel vanished. A neon sign flickered ahead. Tobacco bait, Tom bait, cold beer. That blinking tasted like salvation. Not because it was friendly, but because it didn't pretend. We kept going. Eventually, lights winked awake. Civilization. Diner signs. A gas station just open enough to promise safety. I didn't even glance at the next sign. I just drove until we pulled into a hotel. I parked, deadbolted the door, and wedged the chair under the knob like a stake in the heart of the night. We didn't talk. I think we both knew silence was safer. Night hissed outside. Inside, I fumbled with my phone. I scrolled until I felt numb. I typed Caleb's Fork. Nothing. No travel blog, no Reddit thread, no historic marker, no satellite trail. Just green where the town should be. That silence punched harder than the figures in the ditch. We never spoke of it again. I'm not proud of that, but neither of us needed words to know what happened. I was 29 when I walked out of that cubicle in Philadelphia. And I mean really walked out. My chest felt too tight, like every beat from the printer was reminding me I wasn't breathing. I yanked my bag from the desk, grabbed my mixtapes, and just left. No plan, no GPS, no real destination. Just a half-empty cooler, that rattling, dusty hatchback, and this idea in my mind that I'd reach a place where the air didn't feel compressed. Call it freedom, call it escape. Whatever it was, I needed it. On the 3rd morning, I was somewhere in the Appalachians, winding through roads that seemed to fold in on themselves. Patches of sun streamed through the trees, falling on the dash like spotlights, and I swear my mixtape sounded like memories rather than songs. I blinked a few times and noticed the pavement had cracked apart. Soon enough, the road was more weeds than asphalt. It dropped me onto a track not on any map I'd stolen from the gas station. A faded green sign flicked past in my side mirror, Quarry Lake, 7 Mi. I shouldn't have trusted that old weather-beaten sign, but something about it, the way it was half swallowed by vines, felt more interesting than safe. So I turned. The station I found wasn't active by any measure. Pumps leaned at odd angles, clearly long dead. The colors of rust were all different shades of tired. And then there was an old soda machine out front, looking like someone's idea of rural nostalgia gone forgotten. One button still glowed dim red, like it was winking at me, daring me. I pressed it. The rattling inside was faint but insistent. Soon a bottle tumbled out with a hollow clang that echoed in the quiet. No brand, just W.L. Waiter printed in thick, bold letters. No barcode, no ingredients. No refrigerate after opening. No made in, nothing. I grabbed it and plunked it on the passenger seat. My fingers brushed the condensation as it sat there, doing nothing except existing. I didn't open it, but I kept glancing at it like I might still change my mind. I didn't. Not yet. The silence came just then. Not the hushed kind you get in a forest. This was a different kind. like someone had muted the world. No rustle of leaves, no birds. The car felt small, like everything outside had cut the power. My skin prickled. Not because I was scared, or at least I wouldn't have called it fear. It was more like walking into a room with no air. I kept going, and then I rounded a corner, and there they were. Signs. Handmade. Hammered into aged wooden planks. Something scraped and rough and too deliberate. Words, CLELENC, bleed once, ES on the road. They were low, maybe knee-high, like someone didn't want me to miss them. My breath caught. Was this a performance? A warning? A joke someone forgot to laugh at? The letters were crude, the wood was splintered, all of it felt heavy, purposeful. And then the light changed. The sky was still the same color, but it felt like someone slid a gray sheet over it. It was still around 2 in the afternoon if I'd checked the clock, but the world inside that light was dusk. The windshield drank the light instead of reflecting it. I checked my phone. Definitely 2:12 p.m. by its screen. But it didn't feel like that. It felt pressed, dusk without sunset. I slammed the brakes. And then realized the road behind me was gone. No gravel. No pull-off. No turning back. Just green pressing in. I stepped out. The hollow crunch under my boots echoed back like a reminder. I was out here. And if that road wasn't there, I couldn't undo this. All around me, trees stood like an audience, silent and impartial. I turned slowly. Nothing moved. Nothing had moved. A root might have creaked beneath the surface, but I didn't hear it. I climbed back in. I had no idea what I'd seen or where I was, but I had to keep going. Minutes later, or maybe hours, I had no clue. I passed a mailbox, just sitting in the middle of the road, black and battered, oddly out of place. It looked old, like something out of a rural TV show, except it didn't have a post, just landed there. The door was cracked open. Inside, another W.E. Wellwater bottle. Same design, same label, but this time, thick marker scrawled on the side, all caps, D.O. not drink, drive throge. New ink, sharp letters, the kind that jolts you into awareness. I saw it, felt my pulse jerk, and kept going. Didn't open the door again. More signs came, closer together this time. Hastier scrawls, hands on wheel, no left turns, count your miles. They appeared on tree trunks, stuck in soil, as if planted there. Each one edged on louder, more urgent. The forest felt tighter now. Branches brushed mirrors, tickled the roof of the car, like they were testing strength. I felt watched. Not by eyes, but by presence. The radio clicked on. I didn't touch a dial, I didn't turn the thing on. Static hissed, and then light words slithered out of the speakers. My name, whispered. I stared at the dash, then repeated, angrier, more insistent. Like the voice wasn't trying to say my name, it was trying to tether me to a thought I couldn't catch. I spun the dial. Nothing. I yanked the panel off, wires dangling, and threw it into the woods. Now it was quiet again. Cold silence, flickering in that car. My odometer ticked beyond 22 miles since I'd turned off the main road. That number, 22, felt arbitrary but heavy. Felt like a countdown I didn't want. Then I drove a corner and saw the lake, or whatever it was. Black glass, so still it didn't reflect. Like a horizon-less void hovering. No birds above, no wave. Just perfect, weird nothingness. A white van idled beside it, door cracked open, quiet engine. It felt like an invitation. I gulped. I pressed on, then a plank, flat across the road in front of me. D.O. not stop. He sees you. Thick, jagged letters, like claws scratched into the wood. And me. I obeyed. I didn't even think. I heard the board crack beneath the tires as I drove over it, like a reminder that I was still moving. That's when I saw movement in the mirror. Van behind me looming. In the corner of my eye, something moved. It didn't walk. It didn't walk. It glided. Shape humanish, but limbs twisted at wrong angles. The head didn't turn right, but the eyes stayed locked on me. Just seeing it, a flash, was enough. I hit the gas, too hard, my heart like a jackhammer. My vision tunneled. Suddenly, forest ended. Birds, wind, sunlight splintering through leaves. Silence felt normal again. The road widened, smooth and forgiving, like nothing had happened. I blinked again. I found a gas station soon after. Flickering fluorescence, stale coffee smell, buzzing lights. The guy behind the counter looked at me like he'd seen me bleed dry. Didn't ask questions, didn't have to. He said, You're not the first to come out of that stretch, but you're the first who made it alone. No judging, just acknowledgement. I nodded, paid, bought the ticket out. I never drove past that part of the world again. I'm 32 years old, and this happened after a long weekend trip back home. I'd gone to visit family out in Tennessee. Nothing dramatic, just one of those obligatory visits where you catch up with everyone, eat too much, and somehow leave more exhausted than when you arrived. By the time I was packing up to leave, I was running on 4 hours of sleep and 2 cups of bitter motel coffee. It was late, later than it should have been for starting a drive across state lines. I checked the GPS and saw that the highway was backed up from construction near the state line. I figured I'd be clever and take the back roads through the Appalachian hills. It looked like it would shave at least an hour off the trip. That's what the little blue line promised anyway. I'd done back road drives before. Some potholes, maybe a deer or two, but nothing I couldn't handle. I didn't think twice about it. About an hour in, the GPS on my phone blinked out. At first, it just glitched. It froze for a few seconds, then flashed and kicked me to a blank map grid. No signal, no route, just a gray and white void with no roads on it. I gave it a second, reopened the app, nothing. I wasn't worried. Yet, backroad maps were never reliable out here anyway. I figured if I kept heading in the same direction, I'd connect back to the highway eventually. These mountain roads might twist, but they always led somewhere. That was the logic. The drive got quieter. A few scattered trailers sat far back from the road, barely visible except for the occasional porch light or flicker of a TV behind a dusty window. I passed maybe one car in the first hour, then nothing. The trees closed in tighter the further I went. It started to feel like the road wasn't meant for anyone anymore, like I was driving on memory. The pavement crumbled in places and the curves came faster, sharper. I had to keep both hands tight on the wheel just to feel like I was still in control. And that's when I noticed the mailbox. It sat crooked on the right side of the road, bent at the base like something had hit it years ago and no one had bothered to fix it. The numbers were worn to almost nothing, faded black paint flaking off in strips. I didn't think anything of it at first. There were tons of old homes out here. Mailboxes like that were a dime a dozen. The second time I saw it, I felt a tiny jolt, just enough to make me blink. Same tilt, same broken numbers, same angle to the road. I passed it and kept driving, but the air in the car felt different after that. Thicker, maybe. Third time, my hands were locked on the wheel. I even said something out loud, just this half laugh like, okay, that's weird. Fourth time, I pulled over. My headlights landed directly on the box, casting a long shadow that stretched into the trees. I just sat there, staring at it through the windshield. My hands were trembling without me realizing it. I tried grounding myself, thinking maybe the road looped weirdly. Maybe I missed a turn. Maybe I was just tired. I muttered, "It's just a mailbox." Saying it out loud didn't help. Actually, it made it worse. Like I was trying to convince something else in the car besides myself. Then headlights appeared behind me in the mirror. For a second, I felt real relief. Another driver. Maybe they knew the way out. Maybe they'd even pull over and explain what kind of ridiculous loop this was, but the lights didn't move. They just stayed. No matter how I adjusted my speed when I started driving again, slowing down or speeding up, the headlights matched me perfectly. Always the same distance back. Too far to see the car. Too close to feel comfortable. 20 minutes went by like that. I was too rattled to stop again, but I kept checking the mirror over and over. I finally did pull over, thinking if I gave them space, they'd pass. They didn't. They stopped too. Same position, same distance. Like a mirror that had been turned off. I turned off my engine. Headlights off. Instantly, their lights cut too. And the dark, man, I've never felt anything like it. Not just black. It was like someone had erased the world outside the car. I couldn't see the road, couldn't even see my hand in front of my face. My chest started to tighten, and for a second I thought maybe I'd gone blind. I started the car again, and the engine turned over like nothing was wrong. I hit the gas. Next curve, there it was again. The mailbox. Only this time, it had changed. The wood looked older, splintered deeper. The door sagged open now, rust streaks bleeding down the side like it had been crying. I drove past it again, and again. Every loop, the box looked worse. Paint gone. Numbers shredded. One time the post was so crooked I thought it had finally fallen, but nope. It was still there, still waiting. At some point, I grabbed my phone again, just hoping something had changed. No signal. I dialed 911 anyway, just pure reflex. Nothing. No ringtone, no static. Nothing. Later, when I checked, it said I'd called 12 times. I remember making the call once, maybe twice. That's it. The dashboard clock froze at 2:17 a.m. and wouldn't budge. I must have glanced at it a dozen times, hoping for progress, and it never changed. My odometer, though? That kept ticking. I wasn't driving in circles. The mileage kept climbing just without any new ground being covered. Eventually, I had to stop. I couldn't take it anymore. I pulled over again and got out. The air hit me, wet, cold, like stepping into a cave. I walked toward the mailbox. It didn't feel supernatural or mystical or whatever. It just felt wrong, off. The metal was slick under my fingers, colder than the air, real. But when I turned around to head back to the car, it was gone. The road was gone too. I was standing in a patch of wet leaves, trees all around me. No sign of asphalt, no sound but my own breathing. Then I heard it, an engine somewhere in the trees idling low. I ran toward the noise. Branches slapped against my arms. I tripped, stumbled, cut my leg open on something, but I didn't stop. The engine stayed distant, like it was just over the next hill, the next patch of brush. No matter which way I turned, I ended up back at that damn mailbox. Same one. Still there, still waiting. Then my phone vibrated, no sound. Just a long, hot buzz against my leg. I pulled it out, and the screen came on by itself. No lock screen, no apps, just this white map. One single looping road traced over itself again and again, with little icons where every turn should be. Everyone was the same crooked mailbox, stamped like a rubber seal. That was the tipping point. I ran, no direction, no logic, just panic. And when I looked up again, my car was back, right there, on the road. Driver's door open. I didn't question it. I got in, slammed the lock, and floored it. I didn't stop for anything. The turns came fast, but I didn't care. I was running on adrenaline. The mailbox kept appearing, and I refused to look. I stared straight ahead. I could see lights flashing in the mirror now and then. Sometimes one set, sometimes two, but they never got closer. They never faded either. I drove like that for who knows how long. Then, out of nowhere, I hit a straightaway and the trees dropped away. I shot out onto a 4-lane highway like someone had unzipped the forest. No mailbox, no lights, just open road. I looked at the clock, 6:42 a.m. When I pulled into my driveway later, the odometer said I'd driven nearly 500 miles. That whole trip should have been under 100. I've never touched those back roads again.